Hello. My name is Juliet Easton. And on the day of my wedding, my entire family chose a gala over me. Not one phone call. Not one seat filled. I stood in white while they raised glasses to my sister across town. This isn't a story about being forgotten. This is a story about being erased. Deliberately, quietly, until I decided to show up anyway. The sun was melting into my living room floor, slow and warm, stretching across the hardwood like it had nowhere else to be. A soft breeze stirred the sheer curtains, and for a moment, the silence felt almost tender. My hands hovered over a stack of ivory envelopes, each one addressed in ink I'd tested on 6 kinds of paper. I'd practiced every loop of every letter, like if I wrote beautifully enough, it would matter. Like it would make them come. I tucked the last invitation into its envelope, sealing it with the same care I'd used on the first. My handwriting shook only slightly now. "See you all soon," I whispered, sealing my hope into each one like a quiet prayer. Then I placed them into the outgoing mail pile, lined them up straight like soldiers, and sat back. I believed they would show up. Because she told me once, back when I still wore pigtails and called her Mommy, that family always does. I didn't know that was a lie then. But I do now. 2 weeks later, I stood in the same living room where my childhood unfolded in floral wallpaper and antique chairs we weren't allowed to sit in. I came to drop off a swatch of fabric for my dress, thinking, foolishly, she might want to see it. Want to be a part of it. She didn't even look up when I arrived. The house smelled like furniture polish and vanilla, the same way it had since I was 12 and Celine first made the front page of the local paper. She had a smile that begged for flashbulbs and a laugh that ricocheted off the walls like she owned them. The living room glowed with framed moments. Dance recitals. Debate trophies. Galas. Magazine features. And always, Celine. Her face, her angles, her gowns, her glory. I scanned them slowly, letting the weight of absence settle on my shoulders like an old coat. I wasn't in a single photo. Not one. The wall didn't know I existed. "Did you ever keep any of my pictures?" I asked, trying not to sound 12 again. My mother didn't flinch. She kept folding napkins for Celine's sponsor dinner. "They're somewhere in the basement, dear. You know your sister's frames are for the gala sponsors." Somewhere in the basement. I remember being 5, pressing macaroni into glitter glue, thinking I'd made something worth hanging on the fridge. She'd smiled that tight, polished smile and said, "This is lovely, sweetheart," before tossing it into the recycling that same night. I hadn't asked about displaying anything after that. But it still hurt. This moment hurt more. I turned toward the mantel, hoping, absurdly, to see a school photo, one of those awkward ones with crooked teeth or uneven bangs. But even that space belonged to Celine now. There she was in a champagne dress, toasting strangers who smiled like they'd known her forever. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting nothing, hoping for less. A notification lit up my screen. Celine Harrow Foundation Gala, planning meeting confirmed June 10th. My wedding date. The blood rushed to my ears so loudly I didn't hear her walk back into the room. "I left the swatch on the kitchen counter," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She nodded, still folding. "Thanks, darling." That night, in my kitchen, I stared at my guest list on the laptop. One side for Calder's family. One for mine. His side was nearly full, uncles, cousins, college roommates who now had kids of their own. My side? A column of silence. The RSVP inbox was empty. I refreshed 3 times. I poured a glass of wine and let it sit untouched as the screen glowed, casting a pale light across my face. I scrolled through the spreadsheet again, hoping the names would rearrange themselves into something more forgiving. The stem of my glass creaked under the pressure of my grip. My phone lit up. A voice message from my mother. "Don't worry, sweetheart, we'll see what we can do." Flat. No warmth. No promise. I played it again. And again. "That's a no, isn't it?" I said softly. To no one. The next morning, I walked past downtown billboards on my way to pick up candles for the reception. I wasn't looking for her, but there she was, Celine, 10 feet tall, smiling in her signature red gown. The words beside her face read, "Family for Change." I stopped walking. Let the pedestrians stream past me. Let the city forget me for a moment. "Family for Change," I whispered. Guess I was the change. The billboard sparkled in the sunlight. Her smile didn't flinch. She was born for this. I was born beside her. Close enough to witness, but never invited on stage. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Juliet, my mother's voice said, practiced and precise. We need to talk about your wedding date. I didn't respond right away. Cars honked behind me. A bus wheezed to a stop at the curb. I looked at my reflection in the glass of the billboard. 2 women, one in lights, one in shadow. Mom? I said finally, my voice barely audible. Mom, what is there to talk about? I asked, though part of me already knew. The pause on the other end was deliberate, the kind of silence she used when she wanted control. Celine's gala team just locked in the venue, she said. Her tone carried the calm of someone announcing the weather. It's June 10th. My breath caught. That's my wedding day. I know, she replied quickly, as if hurrying past the truth. But it'll be tight, and we'll make it work. We. She always said we when she meant Celine. Did you think to ask me first? I said quietly. Oh, honey, don't start. You know how difficult it is to book a major space in Savannah this time of year. The sponsors have already committed. I pressed the phone against my chest for a second, trying to breathe through the ache. So, you're saying Celine's gala is more important than my wedding? She sighed, the way people sigh when they think the other person is overreacting. Don't be dramatic, Juliet. It's just one day. Family can do both. She meant her family. After she hung up, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my open planner. The date circled in pink ink blurred as tears gathered. I didn't cry often anymore. I'd learned that in our house, crying was an inconvenience, like running late or asking for help. Slowly, carefully, I drew a single line through the circle. I didn't erase the date. I just marked it, like a scar. Later that week, I found myself standing under the fluorescent lights of a bridal shop. Rows of white dresses shimmered like ghosts. I'd chosen a simple one, lace sleeves, satin waist, nothing flashy. My mother promised to come, to see me in it, to tell me I looked beautiful. She didn't show. The saleswoman fussed with pins at the hem. You have such a classic figure, she said kindly. Your mother must be thrilled. I forced a smile. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom lit the screen. Can't make it. Celine needs help with color matching for the press wall. Reschedule? I stared at the words until they blurred. The mirrors reflected 3 versions of me, each one smaller than the last. The chair marked, Mother of the Bride, sat empty, untouched. I stood there a long time, then unzipped the dress myself and folded it carefully over my arm. The pins clattered to the floor as I walked out. I didn't reschedule. At home, Calder noticed the silence before I did. We met at a corner cafe the next morning, the kind of place with chipped mugs and kindness baked into the muffins. He reached for my hand across the table. You've been quiet, he said. If I scream, I murmured, no one will hear it over the gala playlist. He blinked, not sure whether to laugh or worry. You don't have to compete with them, you know. I'm not competing, I said softly. I just didn't realize I was background noise. He squeezed my hand gently. You're not background to me. I wanted to believe him. I wanted that to be enough. But love doesn't fix the ache of being unseen. He watched me stir my coffee even after it cooled, the spoon tapping against the cup in quiet rhythm. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, one truth at a time. When we left, I typed a message to my mother, we need to talk about the date. My thumb hovered over send, then stopped. I deleted it. That night I dreamed of Thanksgiving 10 years ago. The house had smelled of cinnamon and roasted turkey. I could still see the light pooling on the dining table, the crystal glasses sparkling. Every story ended with Celine's name. Her new internship, her speech at the university, the professor who said she was brilliant. My father raised a toast, to Celine, our shining star. They never noticed I wasn't holding a glass. At 12, I'd learned the choreography, smile, nod, keep plates full, make sure Celine's cranberry sauce never ran out. I was good at disappearing in plain sight. It made things smoother for everyone. When I woke, the air felt heavy, like that same night pressed itself against the present. I opened my wedding checklist on the laptop. The columns stared back, venue, catering, florist, family confirmed. I scrolled through the list of names again. Nothing had changed. No new replies. I remembered Mom's words from the call, we'll make it work. Maybe that was what we'd always been, something she made work when it didn't fit. I closed the file and rubbed my temples. Calder came to the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine, Elite." The word cracked as it left my throat. He nodded slowly, like he'd already learned that pushing me wouldn't help. "You don't have to do this alone." "I know," I said quietly. "But I did." After he left for work, I sat in the half-light of the kitchen. The morning sun touched the refrigerator magnets, the empty counter, the pile of envelopes addressed weeks ago. I thought about calling my mother again, just to ask, "Why can't you pick me, just once?" But what would be the point? Her answer would come dressed in politeness and guilt, polished like a sales pitch. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. I wrote in my planner under June 10th, "Don't expect them. Expect peace instead." The afternoon stretched long and slow. I opened my phone out of habit. Celine's latest post appeared first, her in a sequined gown, surrounded by people in suits. The caption read, "It's official. The gala date is set. Big things coming. Big things. Always big. Always hers." I scrolled through the comments, praise, hearts, applause. Not one mention of me. I closed the app and set the phone face down. Evening came quietly. The air outside was thick with summer humidity. I poured a glass of iced tea and stared at the planner again. Every checked box represented effort, every empty one, disappointment waiting to happen. I imagined my mother's living room filled with gala invitations. The sound of laughter as they sealed each one, the same way I'd sealed mine. Maybe she used the same kind of envelope. Maybe she even used the same pen. The thought stung more than I expected. Later, I opened my closet and ran my hand along the sleeve of the dress still wrapped in plastic. The lace felt cool under my fingers. I whispered, "It's just one day," echoing her words, but the sound felt hollow. When the sun sank and the cicadas began their evening chorus, I finally sat down at my desk. The laptop screen glowed again. I looked at the checklist one more time and dragged my cursor across the line that read, "Family confirmed." I didn't delete it. I just drew a thick line through it, the way I had across my wedding date. A mark that said, "This was supposed to be yours too, but you gave it away." The planner closed with a quiet thud. I folded the pages once, then again, until it fit neatly under a stack of bills. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I'd already learned how to hold pain gently, so it wouldn't spill everywhere. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly over the river. The kind that promised rain but never delivered. I whispered into the stillness, "I won't cancel anything." And in that whisper was something stronger than defiance, resignation, maybe, but laced with a strange kind of peace. The only name I could count on was mine. That thought followed me as I stepped out of the car and into the glowing courtyard of the rehearsal dinner. Calder's family was already gathering, warm hugs, loud laughter, plates passed between familiar hands. The scent of roasted garlic and fresh basil floated through the air, clinging to the linen of my dress like it belonged there more than I did. A hostess greeted me with a clipboard and a smile. "The Easton party?" I nodded, even though it didn't feel true anymore. Not with just one side of the family showing up. I scanned the tables. His relatives filled the seats, children weaving through legs like vines. Silverware clinked against plates. Someone shouted across the patio, "Tell Juliet we can't wait to see her walk down that aisle." They meant well. But their voices only made the empty chairs feel louder. "Juliet," Aunt May said as I approached, arms wide. "We thought we'd meet your mom tonight. She must be so proud of you." My smile tightened. "She's busy with an event." Busy. That word again. It didn't matter what came after it, busy meant unavailable. Uninvested. Uninterested. I took my seat beside Calder. He leaned in, kissed my cheek, whispered, "You okay?" I nodded because lying was easier than explaining. My hand stayed on the stem of my glass too long, knuckles whitening. He turned to answer a question from his cousin, and I reached for my phone. Notifications blinked like tiny alarms. I opened Instagram. Celine's face filled the screen, posed in front of a glittering backdrop with Harrow Foundation Gala in gold script. Her smile was practiced, her eyes trained on the lens like she was born to stare through glass. The caption read, "Locked and loaded, June 10th. It's time to change the world." June 10th. The same day I was supposed to promise myself to someone who already saw me, already chose me. The same day she'd chosen to celebrate herself. I learned to smile in the gaps. Between expectations and explanations. Between what they gave her and what they never offered me. Dinner ended with dessert, berry tarts and decaf coffee. I stood slowly, my legs feeling like borrowed limbs. As I stepped toward the coat rack, my phone buzzed again. A message from my cousin Angie: "Can't wait to see you shine at the gala, sweetheart." Then another, "Oops, wrong sister," grinning face with sweat. I stared at the screen. The emoji grinned at me like it understood. Like it knew exactly where to land the punch. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot and filed it in a folder labeled, "Proof I was right." The folder held other things, too: texts left unanswered, photos where I'd been cropped out, voice messages that started with, "Sorry, I meant to call you back," but never ended with a call. A digital drawer for quiet grief. I looked up. Calder was watching me from across the room. His eyes asked a question he didn't voice. I didn't offer an answer. Some truths didn't fit in small talk. That night, in bed, I stared at the ceiling long after Calder drifted to sleep. The fan spun overhead, casting soft shadows that didn't quite settle. I reached for my phone and scrolled through old pictures, birthdays, beach trips, holidays. One photo stopped me: Celine and I on the dock at the lake house. I was 12. She was 8. We were holding hands, barefoot, grinning. I tried to tag her. An error popped up: "You must follow this user to tag them." Confused, I opened her profile. Blocked. She had blocked me. A dull ache moved from my throat to my chest. Not because she shut me out, but because she made sure I wouldn't see her world, even the one we once shared. She never wondered if I needed to be seen. A memory surfaced, me at 12, asking Mom why I wasn't invited to Celine's lake house party. "Celine's friends are a bit high energy, dear. You wouldn't have enjoyed it." I had baked cupcakes that morning. I'd stayed up the night before, squeezing pastel frosting into swirls. I watched them leave from the upstairs window, my tray untouched on the kitchen counter. I typed a comment under Celine's gala post: "Congratulations on the gala." My thumb hovered. Then I hit backspace. Again. 2 days later, the wedding coordinator called. "Hi, Juliet," she said, voice cheerful. "Just a quick note, no RSVPs from your side yet. Do you want to reduce the chair count for your family's table?" I looked at the seating chart in front of me. My name was alone on a list that should have held 10. "No," I said evenly. "Leave it." "Are you sure? We can adjust." "They'll be empty," I said. "But they'll say something." There was a pause. "Okay, noted." I ended the call and stared at the chart. My name sat there, surrounded by blank lines. It looked like a sentence unfinished. Like a space waiting for someone to fill it, knowing they wouldn't. I pressed the pen to paper and wrote in bold, "Final letters, reserved for those who chose silence." It felt less like grief. More like clarity. The rain came after all. It started while Calder carried the last box inside, thin as thread against the window, the kind of rain that stayed quiet but never really stopped. The house smelled like wet wooden flowers that had been left too long in water. My bouquet, wilted at the edges, leaned against the trash can near the sink. The ribbons hung limp, drained of color. I sat on the hallway floor, still in my shoes, staring at the stack of envelopes we'd gathered from the porch. A small mountain of congratulations, cards from his coworkers, a package from his mother, 2 bills. Then one heavier than the rest, lined in gold, my name written in the careful script I knew by heart. "Maybe it's finally an apology," I whispered. The words felt foolish the second they left my mouth. I tore it open with steady fingers, expecting something soft. What slid out was a sheet of printed paper, no handwriting, no warmth. It listed donation tiers for the Harrow Foundation Gala. Bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Highlighted in yellow, family expected contribution, $1,500 minimum. At the bottom, a note in my mother's familiar hand: "Please help Celine meet her target. You've always been the responsible one. Love, Mom." I read it twice, then a third time, until the letters blurred. "You weren't sorry," I said softly. "You were budgeting." The clock ticked from the wall, loud enough to measure my pulse. Calder walked in, jacket slung over his arm, a faint smile still lingering from the night. He saw the letter, saw my face, and stopped. "What is it?" "An invoice," I said. "For being her sister." He didn't answer. He knew better by now. I placed the paper on the counter, flattening the crease where it had been folded. I didn't cry. I didn't throw it away. I just stood there, listening to the rain press against the glass, quiet and endless. Morning came dull and gray. Coffee brewed and cooled without being touched. I dialed the number I hadn't called in months. It rang 4 times before he answered. Hello? My father's voice was thinner than I remembered, tired but deliberate. Hi, Dad. Juliet. A pause. Everything all right? Your mother said the wedding went fine. She wasn't there, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Your mother handled the wedding, didn't she? I laughed once, quietly. She handled the part where she didn't show up. He exhaled like he was setting down something heavy. It's best not to make things harder, honey. You know how your mother gets about events. Events, I repeated. You mean Celine's gala? He didn't answer. I could hear the clink of a spoon against a mug. That tiny sound made my stomach twist. Dad, do you ever wonder what it's like to have a daughter who isn't a headline? Juliet, he said, careful now, you know your sister's work means a lot to the community. And I don't? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Silence stretched between us. I bent a paperclip until the metal snapped. He cleared his throat. I think your mother's doing her best. She sent me a bill. There was another pause, then a sound like fabric shifting. She means well. She just doesn't always know how to say it right. Right, I said, holding the word in my mouth until it lost meaning. Juliet. But I'd already hung up. I sat for a while, staring at the broken paperclip in my hand, its twisted shape somehow truer than the words we'd just exchanged. Some people break clean. My family bends first. Later that afternoon, Calder and I went to the cafe near the river. The same one where he once asked if I wanted cream with my coffee and I thought he was asking something deeper. He stirred his cup slowly, eyes on me. You're not eating. I laid the gala invoice on the table between us. The ink caught the light like something sacred and sick at the same time. It wasn't a wedding for them, I said. It was an inconvenience. Calder frowned. So what now? I folded the paper once, then again, until it fit into my palm like something that could still be controlled. Now I write my own RSVP. To none of it. He reached for my hand. You don't have to burn every bridge, Jules. I'm not burning them, I said. I'm just realizing they never led home. He didn't argue. He just watched as I pulled the envelope apart at the seams, tearing it quietly, slowly, like shedding skin that no longer belonged. I took a blank note card from my bag, wrote one sentence, and slid it into a new envelope. Respect is not retroactive. When he asked what it said, I smiled. Something Mom won't understand anyway. That evening, I stood by the window as the city lights blinked in the distance. The rain had stopped, leaving streaks on the glass like fingerprints. I thought of all the times I'd cleaned the windows at her house growing up, wanting to make the world outside clearer. Now I realized it wasn't the glass that blurred, it was what I was trying to see through it. A memory surfaced, 3 weeks earlier, at the rehearsal. The church had smelled like lilies and furniture wax. Calder's family filled the pews, rehearsing lines of blessing and laughter. My phone vibrated on the altar. A message from Mom, won't make rehearsal. We have a sponsored dinner for Celine's press team. I'd stood there, bouquet in hand, pretending to listen to the minister, but the words blurred into the same empty noise that followed every excuse she ever gave. Every part of this story they skipped made room for me to find my own ending. Back in the present, I sealed the new letter and wrote on the front, to Eleanor Harrow. No return address. No expectation. Calder watched as I slipped on my coat. Where are you going? To mail something overdue, I said. The mailbox stood a few blocks down, at the corner where the streetlight flickered between amber and dark. The walk was cool and quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heart for once. I slid the letter in, listening to the soft metal clang as it fell inside. I didn't pray for her to read it. I didn't even hope she would. Some truths are written to be released, not received. On the way back, a stray cat crossed the street, its fur slick with rain. It paused under the light, blinked once at me, and disappeared into the alley. I smiled softly, almost tenderly, at the timing of it all. When I reached the porch, I looked back once. The mailbox gleamed faintly under the lamp, holding its small confession. I didn't feel lighter, but I felt something solid inside me shift. Something hollow began to harden, not into bitterness, but boundary. The night after I mailed the letter, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the wind scratch against the windows and the soft hum of the refrigerator. The house felt too big, too hollow, and every room seemed to echo with the sound of something unfinished. I thought about the wedding day that had already passed, the one that felt more like a rehearsal for loneliness than a celebration of love. In the morning, I poured coffee and watched the light crawl across the kitchen counter. The scent of vanilla candles still lingered from the night before. My mind wandered back to that day, the cake, the silence, the way the air in the reception hall felt like an apology no one gave. I can still see it. The table with the white tablecloth. The neat row of folding chairs filled with strangers smiling politely, Calder's aunts asking about honeymoon plans while their husbands checked their watches. And then there was me, holding a plastic cake server in my hand, trying to look like the moment meant something. No toasts. No clinking glasses. No family. The photographer asked us to stand close together, to pretend. The flash went off, and for a brief second I let myself believe I was being captured in something real. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. It was Celine's story. Music burst through my speaker, laughter, flashes of light, champagne fountains. She was on a red carpet lined with gold trim, her name plastered across the backdrop. The caption read, "Tonight is for something bigger than us." Bigger than us? I remember thinking, she chose this moment to shine, knowing it was mine. The sound of clapping from her story blended with the silence around me. It was almost poetic, how her applause became my quiet. I cut the cake, handed out slices, smiled for photos, and listened to someone said, "It's so lovely when families come together." I wanted to laugh at the irony, but laughter would have drawn attention, and I'd learned long ago that silence keeps the peace. Later that week, when the flowers began to wilt and the last thank you card was mailed, I scrolled through my phone in bed. I wasn't looking for anything, just scrolling through the emptiness of my notifications. Then a message appeared. I saw the post. "It's not you. It was never you. I left when they tried to erase me too." The sender's name stopped me, Dana, Calder's former sister-in-law. She'd divorced his brother 5 years earlier, after the family turned her into a footnote in their perfect story. Her words sat on the screen like a hand reaching out in the dark. Erased. She said the word I had been afraid to name. I stared at the message, reread it, then saved her number under reminders of who I am. It felt strange to have an ally appear from a past I didn't even share. Someone who understood the quiet violence of being overlooked. I turned off the lamp and lay there, eyes open, the glow from my phone fading into the dark. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, one recognition at a time. The next morning, I checked the mailbox before Calder left for work. Amid the usual pile, ads, bills, sympathy cards, was a handwritten envelope addressed to me. The return address was a name I hadn't seen in years. Micah. We'd met in college, back when my laughter still came easily and my hair smelled like coconut shampoo. He'd been kind but complicated, full of big ideas and quiet doubts. When Celine got sick during her first year of high school, I dropped everything to help at home. Micah waited for a while, then he didn't. I opened the letter at the kitchen table. "Juliet," it began. "I saw your name in the wedding column. I should have told you back then, your light scared people who couldn't match it. I wasn't brave enough to stay, but I've thought of you often. I hope you finally have people who see you." The handwriting was shaky, maybe rushed, maybe unsure. But it was real. It was someone saying what I had been waiting my whole life to hear. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside our wedding photo. The one where Calder's smile tried to make up for every missing face. The photo frame looked heavy, but the empty space next to us weighed more. I whispered, "I was never invisible. Just inconvenient." The truth settled gently, like dust on the windowsill, quiet but impossible to ignore. That afternoon, while Calder worked from his study, I found myself in the closet again. The garment bag hung there, the wedding dress still inside, untouched since the dry cleaners pressed it. I unzipped it slowly. The fabric shimmered in the muted light. It wasn't armor anymore. It was proof of showing up, even when no one else did. I slipped it on. The zipper slid up easily, as if the dress remembered me better than my family ever had. I stood in front of the mirror. The reflection wasn't the same woman from that day. She looked steadier, sharper, less willing to apologize. I picked up my phone, turned on the camera, and took a single picture. I didn't smile. I didn't pose. I just looked. "Let them celebrate her," I whispered. "But this? This is how I remember me." The words felt right, soft but strong, like a bandage pulled away without pain. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. The blank Word document stared back at me, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I typed the title, The Gala That Wasn't Mine. The tapping of the keys filled the quiet. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small inside my own story. I began to write, not about Celine or Mom, not even about the wedding. I wrote about standing alone at the reception, about cutting the cake with trembling hands, about realizing the applause wasn't missing, it just belonged to someone else. I wrote about Dana's message, Micah's letter, and the way they found me in different corners of absence. And I wrote about the moment in front of the mirror, when the reflection didn't feel like a stranger anymore. When I reached the end of the page, I typed one last sentence. The day my family applauded, I wore white, alone. I hit save. Not share. The quiet that followed wasn't empty, it was earned. The cursor blinked once, then twice, before I closed the laptop. The house had gone still again. The quiet no longer felt like peace, it was the pause before something necessary. I stood up, walked to the hall closet, and pulled the garment bag into the light. The zipper rasped softly as if it, too, remembered. The satin still held the faint scent of gardenia and rain. I stepped into it slowly, the fabric cool against my skin, and pulled the zipper up until it rested against my spine. The reflection in the side mirror barely caught my face, but that was all right. I knew who I was now. They had dressed up for her. I would dress the way they ignored. I slipped on a coat to dull the whiteness, tucked my keys into my clutch, and left a note on the kitchen counter for Calder. I'm not burning bridges. I'm showing them I built the road too. The paper fluttered slightly in the draft as I shut the door. Forsyth Mansion was already glowing when I arrived. Strings of lights arched over the courtyard like an apology written too late. The valet hesitated as I stepped out of the car, his eyes tracing the hem of the gown peeking beneath the coat. I nodded once, and that seemed to be enough to keep him silent. Inside, the air shimmered with perfume and money. Waiters carried trays of champagne that smelled of fruit and gold. The crowd buzzed with the sound of networking disguised as affection. Cameras flashed. A woman laughed too loudly near the door. I didn't need an invitation. I walked straight through the lobby, my heels echoing against the marble. When I slipped off my coat, a ripple moved through the room. White silk in a sea of jewel tones, impossible to ignore, impossible to unsee. Someone clapped once, confused, then stopped. The string quartet faltered mid-note. I heard whispers gather like static. Is that the sister? Is this a stunt? Their voices brushed my shoulders as I moved past them, soft as fabric but sharp as judgment. I didn't look left or right. The weight of their eyes was enough. At the center of the staircase, Celine stood under the spotlight, radiant and rehearsed. Her gown glittered silver, her smile was practiced. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other across the expanse of polished marble. Her face tightened almost imperceptibly before she started down the stairs, clutching her small metallic clutch like a shield. You can't be here, Jules, she hissed quietly when she reached me. The smile on her lips didn't waver. I was never there, I said softly. Might as well show up now. Her jaw tensed. You're ruining this. Ruining what? I asked. Your picture-perfect night? Please, she whispered, her voice slicing between her teeth, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Before I could answer, I felt the air shift. My mother appeared beside her, pearls glinting at her throat, her face frozen in its public expression. Juliet, she said, voice low but sharp. Don't make this a scene. It already is, I replied. You just weren't watching. Eleanor's lips parted, then closed again. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The spotlight, the one that always followed Celine, caught me instead. My reflection shimmered in every phone screen raised around us. Mom, I said clearly, I wish I weren't invisible. The words cut through the hum of the room. A single camera flashed. Then nothing. No music. No applause. Just silence heavy enough to hear my own breath. I turned away before she could respond. As I walked, the train of my dress whispered against the marble, an echo of the aisle I'd walked alone. I passed the sponsor wall, the one plastered with gold lettering and family names. Mine was there too, beneath the heading Gold Patrons, printed without permission, purchased with assumption. They needed my name, not my presence. I reached out, peeled my name from the plaque. The adhesive resisted, then gave way, curling in my hand. The sound it made was small but certain. I folded the strip of gold foil, slipped it into my clutch, and kept walking. Juliet. Celine's voice followed me, thinner now. Wait. We can talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about, I said without turning. You already did all the talking. The night air outside hit my face cool and damp. The music inside began again, forced and brittle. I walked down the mansion steps, the hem of my dress trailing behind me like surrender rewritten into a flag. Each step felt steadier, each breath less borrowed. By the time I reached my car, I could hear faint applause from inside, polite and obligatory. It didn't matter. It wasn't for me. It never had been. I opened the car door, sat in the driver's seat, and rested my hands on the wheel. The engine hummed to life, but I didn't drive right away. I watched the mansion through the windshield, its windows glowing like a stage set after the actors have left. Inside those walls, they would be spinning stories already. She's unstable. She made a scene. She's always been difficult. They'd polish those lies until they shone brighter than the truth. Let them. For the first time in weeks, I didn't need to record a voice memo, didn't need to replay old conversations, didn't need noise to drown the quiet. The silence felt earned, not empty. As I pulled onto the road, my veil, tucked under the seat beside me, fluttered from the open window. It caught the wind, streamed behind me like a ghost finally leaving the house it once haunted. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, step by step. I drove until the glow of the mansion disappeared from the rearview mirror. Somewhere inside that car, between the hum of the tires and the rhythm of my breath, I understood something simple and final. My silence was never meant to keep them comfortable. I parked near the river, cut the engine, and watched the water move beneath the bridge. The moon floated over it like a small mercy. My reflection on the glass wasn't fragile anymore, it looked grounded, calm. They noticed me too late, I murmured. But not too late for me. The night didn't answer. It didn't have to. The stillness was enough. By sunrise, the storm had settled into memory. The streets shimmered with leftover rain, and the air tasted like endings. When I walked into the kitchen, Calder was already there, a newspaper folded beneath his arm. He didn't speak right away. He simply placed it on the table, next to the mug I hadn't touched yet. The headline was circled in red pen, "She showed up in white, a sister's stand at the Harrow Gala." My name was in the second paragraph. I stared at the words until they blurred into gray streaks. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't posted a thing. Yet somehow, the world had seen. Someone at that gala had recorded everything, the entrance, the silence, the line that fell from my lips and split the air open. Now it was everywhere. I didn't post it, I said softly. I didn't perform it. Calder poured coffee but didn't answer. The steam rose between us like a boundary neither of us wanted to cross. But I was seen, I whispered. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently. The warmth between our fingers felt too fragile to hold. My phone buzzed again, then again. Unknown numbers filled the screen. I didn't answer any of them. By noon, the story had taken on a life of its own. Online comments pulsed like static, praise, anger, mockery, sympathy. People chose sides without knowing any of us. My silence had turned into someone else's entertainment. I sat at the dining table scrolling through the avalanche of messages. Good for her. Families like that deserve to be called out. She embarrassed her sister in public, how cruel. She looks so calm in the photos. Like she's finally breathing. Each line was a stranger's version of my truth. Still, I read every word, quietly, slowly, like pressing on a bruise to make sure it still hurts. Then came the direct messages, women from places I'd never heard of. One wrote, "I cried watching you walk in. I've been invisible in my family for 60 years. Another said, "They did it to me too, only I never said a word. Thank you for saying it for me." I didn't reply. I took screenshots and saved them in a folder labeled "Things They Can't Deny." In a world built to forget women like me, saving proof felt sacred. The next message came from a reporter, "We'd like to do a follow-up. But this time, with your voice." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. My story was already public, torn apart and reassembled by strangers. But the thought of reclaiming it, of telling it myself, felt less like exposure and more like oxygen. Across town, another kind of storm brewed. Celine paced the living room of the Harrow house, her phone glued to her palm. My mother sat stiffly on the couch, pearls still around her neck as though formality could protect her. It was taken out of context, my mother said for the 5th time into the phone. You can't believe everything on social media. On the other end, one of her church board members murmured something that made her face tighten. Celine threw her phone onto the coffee table. It wasn't staged, Mom. It just happened. Don't use that tone with me, Eleanor snapped, though her voice wavered. This is spiraling, Celine said. The foundation's PR team is panicking. Sponsors are threatening to pull out. My mother pressed a hand to her temple. The wall behind her was lined with framed certificates, charity plaques, photos from every gala she'd ever attended. Under the light, they looked less like accomplishments and more like evidence, museum pieces from a family curated to look flawless. She's going to ruin everything, my mother whispered. Celine's reply was soft, but it hit like a slap. No. She already did. By evening, reporters gathered outside their house. My mother closed every curtain. Celine scrolled through the headlines, each one a wound she couldn't cover. For the first time, they were forced to see themselves without the polish, stripped of applause and perfect lighting. Back at my place, the phone rang again. This time, I picked up. The same reporter, patient and professional. Ms. Easton, the public is already telling your story. Would you consider telling it yourself? I said yes. 2 days later, I sat in a small recording studio downtown. The host was kind, her voice gentle in the way nurses speak to people they know are still bleeding. She introduced me simply. Today, we're speaking with Juliet Easton, the woman behind the headline that's been everywhere. The mic felt heavy in front of me. I unfolded the letter I had written but never mailed, the one I'd meant for my mother after the wedding. This isn't about a wedding, I began. It's about every time someone said, don't take it personally, after they forgot I existed. The words left my mouth slow, deliberate, weighted with years I didn't know I'd been carrying. People mistake silence for grace, I continued. They think holding your tongue makes you noble. But silence isn't noble. It's a currency. And I've stopped spending it. In the booth's glass reflection, I saw Calder standing outside, just beyond the door, listening. He wasn't smiling. His eyes glistened, but he didn't wipe them. I didn't know if he was proud or just finally understanding the scale of it all. When I finished reading, the host paused before speaking. That was brave, she said. For anyone listening, what would you say to the people who've been made invisible? I thought for a moment, then said quietly, don't wait to be visible. Make them look. The interview ended there. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was full. I walked out into the sunlight, blinking against it. Calder met me at the curb. He didn't say much, just handed me my coat and kissed my forehead. You did what they couldn't, he whispered. You told the truth. That night, I closed my laptop after the recording went live. Across town, my mother deleted her Facebook account. Celine typed an apology in her notes app, read it twice, and never posted it. For the first time, I didn't care what story they told next. The world had already witnessed mine. The porch light blinked on just as I stepped out of the car. It wasn't motion-triggered. Calder had left it on, like he always did when he knew I needed a quiet landing. No questions. No noise. Just space to re-enter my own skin. I let the keys drop into the ceramic bowl by the door and stood there for a moment, still in my coat, holding the silence like it was something sacred. The laptop waited on my desk, but I didn't open it. I didn't need more headlines, more noise, more people deciding what the story should mean. Instead, I walked into my office and looked at the box by the window. Inside were the first scholarship packets, thick with promise and inked with names I didn't know but already admired. Girls from small towns and big shadows. Daughters who had always been told to wait their turn. I picked up the top envelope and held it to my chest. They gave their name to her, I whispered. I gave mine to someone who needed it. The business cards had arrived earlier that day, white with soft navy lettering, Juliet Easton Foundation, for the daughters overlooked. No logo. Just the name and the intention. I sat at the desk, hand-signed the first acceptance letter, and placed it into a matching envelope. No press release. No gala. Just a girl in a kitchen choosing to start something better. An email pinged. Subject, Collaboration Inquiry, Harrow Foundation. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I already knew what it would say. Some variation of, let's move forward, or family is family, or what's past is past. The words would be smooth, strategic, full of the kind of diplomacy that comes too late. That night, the kitchen glowed gold under the pendant lights Calder installed last fall. I leaned against the counter, pouring a glass of water when the phone rang. Caller ID, Celine. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I picked up. Hey, she said, voice thinner than I remembered. People are turning on me. Mom says we need to get ahead of it. I stared at the faucet as it dripped once, slowly, deliberately. There's no we in your get ahead, I said softly. A pause. You're still my sister, she added, and I could almost hear her blinking back a tear she wasn't used to explaining. You made that a solo act, I replied, then ended the call before she could offer another line rehearsed for sympathy. The stillness after a hang-up has a weight all its own. It didn't feel harsh. Just final. 3 days later, I hosted the first dinner for the foundation. It was nothing elaborate, just folding chairs, homemade food, and candles in mason jars. The community center let us use the room for free, and the girls showed up in sweaters and sandals and wide eyes. No cameras. No speeches. Just plates passed across tables and the kind of laughter that feels like water after too many dry seasons. At the center of the table sat a cake, simple vanilla with buttercream icing. A replica of my wedding cake. Except this time, it was shared. I stood and raised my glass. This isn't a rebuttal, I said, meeting each face. It's a return, to what we all deserved the first time. The girls nodded. One reached across the table to squeeze another's hand. Later, as the plates were cleared and the room began to quiet, one of them turned to me and asked, "What did your family think of the scholarship?" I smiled, not bitter, just honest. They weren't on the invite list. She blinked, then laughed, the sound bright and surprised. We didn't talk about it again. That evening, after everyone left, I drove alone for a while. The roads were familiar, but I took the long way home, letting my thoughts settle like leaves on a calm river. Eventually, I ended up outside the Harrow house. The porch light was on. Inside, I could see my mother pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Celine sat on the porch swing, arms crossed, face blank. I didn't get out. Didn't honk. I parked across the street, got out, and walked to the mailbox. The envelope I carried was unmarked, plain, quiet. Inside it, a single line. I release you. You no longer live rent-free in my peace. I slipped it into the slot and walked back to the car. Soft music played on the radio, something instrumental and kind. The passenger seat was empty, but I didn't feel alone. I felt complete. As I pulled into my driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically. No applause. No audience. Just belonging. I turned off the engine, rested my hand on the steering wheel, and let out a breath I didn't realize I was still holding. Peace doesn't need permission. Just space. Morning light stretched across the kitchen table, soft and gold, falling over the stack of thank you notes I hadn't mailed yet. The coffee steamed gently beside them, curling into the air like breath after prayer. The house was quiet except for the slow ticking of the clock, steady, patient, no longer counting losses. I opened a new journal, its pages still stiff, waiting for something honest. The first line came easily. I didn't rebuild from ashes. I just walked out before it burned me too. The words looked steadier than they felt, but they were mine. Not triumphant. Not bitter. Just clear. Outside, the neighborhood was waking, car doors, barking dogs, a lawn mower humming somewhere down the street. Life had resumed without my permission, which, I suppose, was the point. Peace didn't need to ask anymore. The doorbell rang. A single chime, soft but certain. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, no one was there. Only a small envelope rested on the mat, plain and familiar. No stamp. No return address. I picked it up carefully, as if it might bruise. The handwriting stopped me cold, her script, curved and deliberate, the same one that once signed my permission slips, my report cards, the birthday cards that always arrived late but never without advice. Inside was a folded note. You misunderstood everything. I hope someday you'll see it. No greeting. No apology. Just an assertion, a mother's final attempt to rewrite what had already been lived. I sat on the couch, turning the paper over once, twice. The words didn't sting this time. They barely reached me. You hoped I'd see it, I said aloud, the sound strange in the stillness. I hoped you'd hear me. I stood and carried the note to the porch. The morning breeze brushed against my arms as I placed it in a small ceramic bowl. I struck a match. The flame caught slowly, curling the edges inward, eating the apology that never was. Ashes fluttered upward, breaking apart before they reached the railing. Across the street, Mrs. Larkin was watering her garden. She looked up, met my eyes, and gave a quiet nod. No words. No questions. Just understanding. Back inside, I walked down the hallway that led to my study. On the left wall hung the remnants of a life curated by other people, school photos, graduations, a single framed image of Celine standing beside me at my 13th birthday. My arm around her shoulders, her smile brighter than the candles. I took it down. The nail left a small scar on the wall. I didn't cover it. Scars tell the truth. From a drawer, I pulled out a candid photo from the scholarship dinner, a girl laughing mid-bite, another raising a glass, light falling across their faces without pretense. I framed it and hung it where Celine's photo had been. This wall doesn't lie, I whispered. It remembers. For the first time, my hallway didn't look like a museum. It looked like a home. At the end of the row, I left one frame empty, glass waiting for whatever came next. Later that afternoon, Calder suggested we get some air. We drove to the park where we used to sit during our first months together, before family expectations and phone calls began to shape our weekends. The same oak tree shaded the bench, though it had grown fuller, as if time had been kinder to it. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that speaks more than conversation. "You okay?" he asked eventually, not looking directly at me. "No," I said after a pause. "But I'm free." "That's better." He nodded, squeezing my hand once before letting go. Children ran across the grass, chasing a soccer ball that refused to stay in bounds. Somewhere behind us, a mother laughed, the sound spilling over the hum of the wind. Life moved around us, gentle and indifferent, no longer something I had to earn my place in. A little girl tripped near the path, scraping her knee. Before I could think, I was already on my feet. I knelt beside her, brushing the dirt away, helping her stand. She looked up, eyes wide, surprised that someone had noticed. "It's okay," I said softly. "Happens to everyone." Her mother hurried over, thanked me, and they walked off, the girl limping slightly but smiling again. I returned to the bench. Calder watched me, his expression unreadable, then said, "You're still showing up for people. Even when no one showed up for you." I smiled faintly. Maybe that's the point. We sat there until the sun lowered, painting the sky in amber streaks. I thought of all the roads I'd taken to reach this quiet, every silence, every wound, every step away from what should have loved me but didn't know how. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, step by step. When the streetlights flickered on, we walked back to the car. The air smelled faintly of pine and cut grass, the kind of scent that forgives without asking you to forget. At home, I paused outside the door and looked back once. The night was warm, steady. No ghosts followed me in. Inside, I poured a cup of tea and set it beside the journal on my desk. On a fresh page, I wrote, "I don't need their apologies to close the story. I just needed my own ending." I sat for a long time, listening to the house breathe. Then I placed the pen down and walked to the window. The moon hung low, the same one that had watched me cry years ago on that same river road. Only this time, it didn't look like pity. It looked like witness. I whispered to the glass, "Some families break you. Some truths remake you." Then I turned off the light. Sometimes, it's not the apology we wait for that sets us free. It's the moment we no longer need it. If you've ever been the quiet one at the table, the forgotten name in the story, this one was for you. What would you do if your family chose someone else's spotlight over your vows? Let me know in the comments, your story matters too. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel for more true stories that speak softly but carry power.